We are live.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 11 for Embodiment of Soul Care. I thought it was 12, but Casey corrected me, so I'm already a week ahead of us. You might be wondering why the heck we're wearing these, but we're actually trying to get better audio for you guys because my monster voice takes over and Casey's freezes and does all this staticky stuff. So we're going to try these, see if this goes a little bit smoother, a little bit better for us. It's actually part of our whole entire title today, the self check-in. We're checking in with everything. So yeah, today we're going to talk about self check-in, being aware of where you are and where you are going. So, have you incorporated all of these things that you've wanted to practice into your daily life? Or have you even spent 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 1 second during the day trying to be in the presence of whatever it is that you're working on? And Casey and I decided that we'd take that upon ourselves today to kind of check in with each other and see where we've been, what we've been working on, and what has been working, what hasn't, and what we want to continue to work on. So I guess I'll just jump right in to some of my check-ins and some of the things that I've noticed over the past, 11 weeks, right? We'll just go from our podcast standpoint of 11 weeks. So the first thing that I feel like I have worked pretty good on, and I'm still currently working on and will till the day I die, is that part of letting things go, the part of being free within myself. So trying not to look into situations so closely to where they start to take me over. In other words, noticing and looking at situations, but not attaching myself to them. So allowing myself to be completely separate from those scenarios, whether it's verbalization from somebody else or my own mind and my own thinking, unattaching myself from that whole entire embodiment of feeling or thinking those thoughts further into myself. So it's been a test and a trial for sure. I mean, it's been a challenge because the ego, I guess I could give you a little background. I come from a family that is, everybody has to be right. There's kind of these control issues and, we're Irish Italians like, no, I got this answer. No, I got this answer. No, I do. No, I do. And it's kind of a power struggle that you deal with from, the time you come out of the womb and you're listening to it and hearing it and feeling it and seeing it into adulthood. And I found that a lot of times in my life, even in my relationships, whether they be friendships or intimate relationships, I always found myself kind of trying to be the powerhouse in that relationship instead of just trying to be unattached to the situation, and not unattached to the point where I'm like, what did you say? It doesn't matter, but more so like unattached where I don't react in a way that is unfair to somebody, or I'm reacting as the ego, or as Casey said in a past podcast, that lion, that tiger coming out and trying to attack everybody to be right. And so it's been a challenge, and it's been a challenge too, even when I speak to my family members, because they still have that mentality of having to be right. And I'm having to stand there in my space and in my grace and in my love and in my presence and awareness and say, okay, you're feeling that. And that's really powerful that you're feeling that. But I have to inform you that I don't have to feel that just because you are feeling that. Like, I'm unattached from your emotion. I have my emotions that I'm trying to unattach from, but I definitely don't have to also attach to yours. So those are some things that I have been working on in terms of that. Also observing that pain, tiredness, and again, emotional states, not allowing them to become a part of me, not allowing them to define who I am. So how some people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm always angry. I'm just an angry person. Or I'm always sad. I'm just a sad person. I'm bipolar. I'm this, I'm that. And they're identifying themselves with those words, with those emotions, with those scenarios. Or I'm an abused woman, or I'm starving, or I'm homeless, or whatever. Trying not to identify who you are 100% with those titles, and instead remembering who you truly are. And that's what I've been working with. I am not just a mom. I am not just an author. I am not just an acupuncturist. I am not just a redhead that does a bunch of lawn work and takes care of horses. I'm not just a wife, I'm not just those things. Like, I am a whole being that came here to be that whole being. and work within the world of the duality of the spirit as well as the human form, and really working hard at bringing those things together and checking in with myself constantly throughout the day. I was telling Casey earlier this week, I've really found myself starting to communicate with people and being very conscious and very aware of how I'm communicating with them in terms of the space that I'm sitting in. If I'm going into a conversation, I'm kind of like not in a good mood. Well, I make the conscious effort to maybe not have that conversation or not answer the phone at that moment, and try to bring myself back to square one, or answer the phone and test myself. Like, how well can I deal with this? How good am I at holding, a good space, even though I'm not feeling good, and bringing myself back into that spirit body as quickly as possible so that I can, it's just practice. It's practice daily. And I'm constantly checking in with that. And that kind of brings me to that point of, we are existing in that duality. So when you're existing in that duality of the spirit and the human, you have the psychological mind versus your spirit mind. And that psychological mind can get so sticky. That's where we start to, like we talked about last time, Casey, create those stories, create something that happened that really didn't happen. So that psychological mind can be very dangerous. And I've really checked in a lot in the last 11 weeks on keeping the psychological mind separated from my spirit mind. And I do a lot of that through meditation. And I was just telling Casey that right before we hit play on this or record, that, I've almost started to have nothing to say. I just kind of in conversation. And the other day I thought to myself when I got off the phone with a friend, I was like, God, I must just be really boring. Because suddenly I'm just like, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, that's okay. That's good. And I can hear them kind of in their mind, like being like, where is she? But it's interesting because I've almost, I'm trying so hard to let go of that psychological mind and be in that spirit presence that I'm really losing that I guess fight and fire that was so egotistical. I haven't lost the fight and fire, trust me. but I have lost the egotistical fight and fire, and now I'm kind of trying to turn my space into that spirit fight and fire, where it's like, you're coming from passion, you're coming from truth, coming from love, understanding, and you can still be extremely powerful in that, more so than ever in your ego space. So that's what I've kind of been working on in the last 11 weeks. And that just that human versus spiritual vibration, just really trying to mesh the two together. It's a hard place to be, even though it's a natural place to be. And I think that's what a lot of us get confused with. And a lot of people treat it like a test, or homework, where it's like, oh, I just don't want to do it anymore. And it's like, yeah, well, it's the most natural form that you are. And it's the easiest form that you are. And when you just, I guess, in a sense, surrender, would that be a good word for it, Casey? Just surrendering to it, then it just takes you over and you can just be in that space. And then, yeah, you're going to get shot off this way and shot off that way and angry and mad and upset, and just work to bring yourself back there, and being conscious of your conscious mind, being conscious. I mean, that's where freedom is freedom is consciousness, being conscious of your consciousness. That's freedom. And we want to be free. We want to be free in our everyday life. We want to be free in everything that we do. We want to allow that space. And I know Casey will get a little bit more into allowing that space in your everyday life. And yeah, that's pretty much the things that I have been working on. Did I miss something that I told you about that I skipped over because my mind is like, what?
No, that was actually really powerful. And I love, kind of on the, there's a lot to what you said. So when you talked about wholeness, I love that you brought up wholeness. Oh, and the fact that like, it's actually our easier mode of operation to be an integrated self, to be a whole self, to be a conscious self, that's more natural, that flows. And why do we resist that? What is it that gets in the way and that has us want to hang on to the fight and fire on the unconscious side, versus the
Right.
spirit side. So, and like you said, I mean, it's working that muscle. And the more that we practice just being in the conscious space, I love what you said about how you almost have less to say now, because you're just being really present and in the present moment and quiet. And sometimes there isn't that thing to interject that before, you would have just thrown right in there.
Oh yeah. That reminds me of the whole Facebook thing.
Oh,
That's
totally.
right. That's what I forgot.
Yes.
So, okay. Well, first of all, I have to say that this is pretty cool what Casey calls Facebook now. She calls it ego book. I love it, because that's all it is. It's just a book of egos. I want everybody to look at Facebook from here on out as the ego book and see if anybody in there, other than like writing a spiritual quote or whatever the case is. I even want you to sometimes look at those spiritual quotes, because they are egotistical in a sense, some of them, but, yeah. So I want you to go, that could be homework for everybody, go and look and see how much ego is present there. But it was a big test for me. It was a big check-in for me this week, with the whole BLM movement and people, getting on Facebook and voicing their opinions about it, which fine, beautiful, voice your opinion. I think everybody has something to say, then go ahead and say it. Be careful where you're saying it from. Like we talked about, egotistical, is it the human psychology or is it the spirit psychology? Like which mind are you speaking from? But the thing is that there are people who are saying stuff because they just want to say it, not to start a fight. They even preface it that way. They say, hey, I'm not looking for an argument. I just want to say this. And then all of a sudden, all they're getting is argument after argument after argument after argument, and people attacking them. And then someone making a comment, and then someone attacking that person for making that comment. And it's just going on and on and on and on. And I caught myself this week because I wanted to get involved. I wanted to, not from the egotistical standpoint, say, hey, everybody, you're all attacking each other and you're all being bullies with each other. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're all being a representation of what you're fighting. But yet you're fighting about what you're fighting about. And it makes no sense to me how this is even a conversation or an argument. Yeah. But I didn't say it. I turned off the computer and I took a deep breath and I said, this isn't my space. I wasn't invited. The person strictly said right out, they wanted no comments. This was like 3 or 4 different posts through the week. They didn't want any comments, these people. They didn't want any backlash. They didn't want any judgment. And I was about to make a judgment. I was about to egotistically jump in to the ego book and put my egotistical thoughts into it when they specifically asked me not to. I mean, how many times do we do that? How many times do people say, I'm going to tell you this. I don't want any judgment. I don't need any comments. I'm just going to say it. I just need someone to say it to. Maybe don't do it on social media. Maybe call your friend, voice it there. I don't know. Might be a peaceful place for you to just say it to somebody else. Like if I have something to get off my chest, I write it to Casey. I really do, or, and I say, hey, listen, I just had to tell you this real quick. This is what I was thinking. I don't go to social media and lay it down because people are going to judge you. It is the ego book. It is the space where you're going to get bullied. You're going to get beat down, and you just have to prep yourself for that if that's something that you're going to bring forward. Just like, doing this podcast. I'm sure people would love to, say something, and they have, up one side and down the other. And it's like, okay, well, that's for you to do. But the thing is don't jump in and fight a fight that you're all fighting together against each other, and try to control your ego in that whole scenario. I know I didn't. I was even going to just try to say something nice. And I still didn't do it because I didn't feel that it was the space to do it. So that was my little rant on the ego book.
Well, like you said the other day, you realize, okay, I'm not their mom. It's not even necessarily for me to tell everyone to be kind or be nice. They're doing their thing.
No one asked
me.
So,
okay,
Yeah, you don't ask me, I shouldn't say anything,
Yeah. Well, it's just such an amazing opportunity. You and I were just present to the last couple of weeks, like, wow, this is really an amazing opportunity to be conscious of
Yes.
your own motivations and what's kind of behind, and I had said to you a similar one that I saw. I really wanted to post something positive for the person that posted, to just say, hey, I support you no matter what backlash you're getting. It's okay for you to be expressing the opinion you're expressing in the way you're doing it. There's nothing wrong with that. But instead, I just sent it in a private message to him because I thought, this doesn't need to be public. All I want to do is express my support to one person. So I'm just going to reach out to him privately, because he had even said at one point, like, if you do have something to say, just, message me privately. Or someone had posted that like a week ago. Anyways, it stuck with me. It really stuck with me. Because it's like the ego wants it to be public, or needs to try and influence other people, or needs to be like, oh, I have a job to do here and I need to fix everyone's opinion and I need to fix the world.
It needs to be validated.
Oh my God, totally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, it's just been really powerful to kind of look at it from that perspective and be like, oh, okay, I don't need to be validated. I just want to express support. And then boom, I was done. He shipped back a quick message. That was it. And I felt really complete. And it felt better, to not have posted it publicly and then keep seeing where that engagement went, or maybe somebody would have engaged with mine and, fought with mine, or even if they'd agreed with mine, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether someone's fighting against it or agreeing with everything you say, it's all kind of part of the same thing. So, it's just something that everyone, listening to this can play with, play with social media and how you're interacting with it. Are you, even news in general, are you taking a break from it right now? Are you kind of, I think, holding it at a distance, to some degree? It's like, you just kind of watch it as a feed that you don't need to directly engage with per se. Or if you do it very consciously. Like Kelly said, maybe you turn off your computer for 10 minutes. If you still feel like responding, then maybe you respond, but maybe you give yourself a little cushion of space, and then maybe in 10 minutes, you won't even care. You'll have forgotten about it, and you realize, okay, I really don't need to put that in. So it's a fun space to play right now, to see where you can become more conscious of yourself,
Right. Well, and I think too, people should do that, like even in the workplace.
Yeah.
Every day when you're at work, do the same thing. Cause God knows, in the workplace, how many times do we get confronted with things to be like, what? Why would you say that? Or what did you hear him? Did you hear what she believes in or he believes in? Can you believe that stuff? Test yourselves. That's where you check in, is when you're being tested. That's when this is so important, that you are aware of where you're at and then aware of where you want to be, and trying to get to that spot. But so, and we just use social media as kind of a platform for us to talk about, because, well, first of all, this is on social media. And secondly, because so many people are on there arguing, and it's hard to not see the bantering and the cross waves of, egos going back and forth. And I think I said this to you today, Casey, that egos are treat them like children that want their way. The more you silence them, the louder they start to yell at you. Until finally, because you're just not hearing them, they go quiet. And that's like when with your kids, you're like, where the hell did they go? Is everybody okay? Hello, everybody. Hello. Is everyone dead? Like, what just happened? Did everybody just leave the house? So it's the same thing with your ego. It's like suddenly it becomes really silent, and then you're like, I have nothing to say. Where am I? So, and then you start to get further in touch with where you really are and who you really are. So, okay, Casey, I am interested to know what your check-ins were this last 11 weeks and where you're standing.
Yeah, because you said, getting present to who you are and where you're at. And I think that's why we thought this would be so powerful. There was this time in early March and for a couple months, kind of during the quarantine, and things did get a little quieter in terms of, we were out in the world less, and some other things got louder, right? Because maybe you're on news more, social media more, or whatever. So it's kind of like this interesting juxtaposition. But I think a lot of people did experience, some quieting down, or at least a reevaluation. Is that important to me? Is it not? And that's, my number one. Because in some of the earlier podcasts, I really talked about, I'd been really creating and really excited about what I was creating. And then when it all, just kind of got stopped or hit that brick wall, and then realizing how attached I was to so many of those things, but that allowed me to get quiet. And where I'm at now, a couple months later, is really reevaluating, okay, well, which of those things am I still interested in pursuing? you know, there's things right now either really seem to be flowing, like connecting with a friend or meeting up with them, or, you know, things are either really flowing or it's just like literally pulling teeth, you know, like the experience. So some of the things I had in the queue, like now that I'm kind of going back to like, okay, maybe I'll try and get that going again. It's like pulling teeth to get it going. And I decided, I was like, okay, I'm not going to get frustrated or disappointed or do any of that. Like, oh, you know, 3 months ago it was so great and now it's not. And woe is me. It's like, no, okay, cool. If it's not flowing, then it's not right anymore. You know, it's not right for now. I'm not going to force anything, you know, and I really came to peace with that. So that's been a really good thing. You know, my first one was just realizing how attached I was. And once I did let go of that attachment and quieted everything down, and now I'm going back to it and really looking at it, you know, from almost like a distance, being like, okay, what's worth reviving? And what am I just going to either, you know, just toss out? What am I going to recreate? So there's almost like a new space for creativity now. You know, I felt a lot of creativity a couple months ago, and now there's a whole new space for creativity. And I love how doing this podcast, I mean, I'm so grateful, you know, that we've been doing this because it's really helped me just stay in that centered space. One of the women that I follow, a thought leader, Jill Renee Feeler, I think I've mentioned her before, and she had this really beautiful visual about if you're, you know, because I've talked before about, you know, kind of your heart field, your aura, you know, kind of this sphere. Imagine this sphere around you. If you're on the outer edges of your sphere, kind of looking out, what's going on, what's happening, what's going to happen, where are we going, what is everyone doing, what are you thinking, why are you thinking that? You're almost like on the edge of your sphere, right? You're almost like I see it like a bubble, right? Like you're kind of pushing against, like trying to figure out like what's out there, right? And she said, and the other way of living, you know, is really being centered, like you're in the center of your sphere. When you live in the very center of your sphere, the very center of your heart, I mean, just the energy of it is so different. So that's, you know, my second one is, you know, because it was definitely, you know, kind of that it's testing ground, you know, that we talked about. I mean, there's just so much that's been tested. And I'd had a big breakthrough in holding space and grace and releasing bitterness back in December. And then when all the kind of COVID and quarantine came in, that really got tested. Like, really? Are you really holding space for grace? Are you really unattached? Are you really, you know, staying centered in yourself and in your own heart and in your own light? So definitely the journey of the last couple of months has been, and like I said, this podcast has helped me so much to stay present, to stay conscious. That's why it's been such an amazing vehicle. That's why we're still doing it, you know, because both of us have really gained from that. And then wanting to, you know, just put that out there for other people to stay conscious of it, because the more we can do that. So yeah, I mean, just having that centeredness, that sense of inner peace, that, you know, not getting pulled off center. And what I'm so grateful, because I mean, this was going to be a big year no matter what. For those of us who live in the US, you know, you had the 2020 election, like no matter what, it was going to be a very polarized year. It was going to be an intense year. This definitely added to it. You know, I mean, the events of the last couple months certainly added to it. And now there's kind of like even more fuel to the fire, but it was going to be intense anyways. And so I'm really glad, you know, we've talked about this, that I got to do the work up front, a little bit up front, you know, rather than like the fall or like the summer, kind of from now until the election being really intense. I feel like I got to go through my, okay, stay in your center. Yes, I can do this. You know, I kind of kept testing it and I just got stronger and stronger and stronger. My ability to stay centered no matter what, you know, which is why I can just, oh, now the social media thing, great. Nope, don't have to respond. Boom, it's easy, move on. I'm not thinking about it. It's not affecting my day. Being just much more confident in how I'm choosing to handle things, and how, kind of like you said, if I choose to express an opinion, it's more from a centered place, and maybe I'll choose to express it and maybe I won't. And I'm really at peace with that. So I'm really grateful that I got to do that work like almost ahead of time, you know, versus like kind of having it slammed up against me when it maybe got closer to the election or whatever. So that's been a real gift. And the other thing, because you had mentioned this, Kelly, in one of our earlier podcasts, and you talked about the overjoy, you know, so another big thing for me, I didn't realize just how much I lived from almost a constant state of overjoy. And sometimes it was in a positive way. Like I was just so excited about what I was creating. And sometimes, you know, it was more in a, like this force, like I was pushing myself to keep moving, get it done, kind of rushing. Like I didn't realize how much I was living from rushing around. And then when we kind of had to take a couple months off from either, pretty much I only went to the grocery store like everybody else. And then when things started opening up again, and it was like, oh, okay, I was taking my son to a few karate classes again, or, you were finally going places again. I noticed the tendency to like want to rush there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like some really intense nervous system programming that I had gotten to come down from when there was like pretty much nowhere to go. And then it kind of came up again. I was able to be much more conscious of it. And now, gosh, I'm just doing so much better with it, so I've really made a huge breakthrough in my experience of life in this overjoy mode, to kind of push, whether it's getting something done or getting somewhere on time, and just being able to be more conscious, be like, okay, sweetie, I mean, either number one, we have plenty of time to get there. You're good, or, okay, we might be like 1 minute late. It's okay. And if you want to get up earlier next time to get there 3 minutes early, great, do that. But taxing your nervous system right now isn't going to actually help you get there any quicker, So it's like, I didn't realize just how much I lived in that. So I'm really, that's kind of something, as far as like, where am I going and what am I, going to keep working on moving forward. That's a big one. I love that I'm more conscious of it now and that I can kind of keep that going and just keep getting better and better at it and keep allowing my nervous system to calm more and more naturally. Because it's almost like uncomfortable now. I think that was the thing. Like before, I just lived in it so much that was kind of natural. And then once my nervous system was able to calm down more, now when I go there, it's like, oh, wait a second, but we haven't been living like this for, what do they say? A habit takes like 21 days, so it had longer than 21 days for my body to almost like reset itself and create a new habit. And it's like, no, I don't want to go back to feeling that way, and I was able to be like conscious of not wanting to go back to that.
Right.
So that's a really, really good one. I'm excited about that one. Oh yeah. The flexible thing. What's really cool. So I already spoke about this, but I wanted to say how Jill describes it with the centeredness, just back really quick. She calls it being durable in your light. And there's something I really love about that. Cause it's like,
the durability. Yeah.
The durability, because I think to some degree, like, people are feeling pulled and like, how am I going to weather this storm? And how am I going to, I mean, life is intense and it's not necessarily out there going to slow down too much. I think we're all kind of aware of that. Like everyone is a second wave of COVID coming, the election's coming up, like everyone's kind of, there's stuff, it's not necessarily calming down. And the more durable you are in your light, in yourself, so I love that languaging, and I've really been playing with that. And that's what you control. You control your own durability. And what greater gift, right? Like to be working on. So that's, kind of the other thing. It's like, yes, I want to keep working on my durability because I've already seen the quality of life that it brings to me. So that's motivation enough, right? Like it does. It restores a particular quality of life. And I wanted to, and isn't that like what we're all trying to go for, right? I mean, why we care about all these things. And I mean, isn't it all about quality of life? So a couple weeks ago, I got an email and it reminded me of one of the most life-changing books I read. And this was super early in my spiritual journey, but it was so powerful. And I just wanted to mention it briefly. So it's called Power versus Force. And the author is David R. Hawkins. And the subtitle is The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. And what's really cool about what he did, so he basically used kinesiology and muscle testing to calibrate the levels of consciousness. And on this podcast, we're always talking about consciousness, unconsciousness. So he was calibrating these levels, and it's pretty cool. I'll show you the chart, real quick. So he kind of, works his way up. On the very bottom is shame. You've kind of got shame, guilt, apathy. And for example, like anger is above guilt and shame because anger at least has, you can actually empower yourself through some anger, right? Versus if you're apathetic, you're just like laying around like, oh, this is terrible. I can't do anything. But anger might actually motivate you. It is a higher level of consciousness, so as you go through these levels of consciousness, you continue to empower yourself. And then right at the 200 level, so he calibrates between 0 and 1,000. And right at 200 is the dividing point between kind of the lower negative of emotions, the lower vibrations, and the higher. And that's the level of courage and empowerment. And that's kind of the dividing line. And what's kind of cool, like he calibrated that all the way through most of last century. Humanity was kind of hovering around 190. And then finally, I think it was more around the 90s or the year 2000. Anyways, like we finally made the jump as a collective, like over 200, which is kind of cool, you know, like kind of broke that barrier of finally the collective was more in the positive zone. And what's kind of cool, like he's calibrated different historical figures, like Einstein was like 499. And he was kind of like, because there's a threshold right at 500, and 500 is unconditional love. And kind of above that is where like the avatars of consciousness are, you know, like a Jesus, a Buddha, they're like at 1,000, you know. And here's what's beautiful. So I wanted to read this to you because the levels of consciousness mathematically aren't additive, they're exponential. And this is what empowered me so much years ago when I read this. It's like, if you're operating at the lower levels of consciousness, the amount of power it has is very small, because as you go up the levels of consciousness between 0 and 1,000, it's exponential. So if you're existing at, let's say, 200 or 300, 400, 500, there's a reason why a figure like Jesus, brought such a level of consciousness to the planet and impacted the world in such a huge way, because literally, energetically, his impact was exponential. So I'll read this to you to just kind of give you a sense. So one individual who lives and vibrates to the energy of optimism and a willingness to be non-judgmental of others will counterbalance the negativity of 90,000 individuals who calibrate at the lower weakening levels. One individual who lives and vibrates to the energy of pure love and reverence for all of life will counterbalance the negativity of 750,000 individuals who calibrate at the lower weakening levels. So it's like, you may be operating even, and this is like moment to moment. Let's say in a moment, you're looking at Facebook or you're whatever, and you want to kind of jump in. Okay, your words might have some impact, right? But your energy can have an exponential impact. So even if you just take a couple seconds and send an energy of pure love and non-judgment and that type of energy to the situation, exponentially, you're having a bigger impact. Now, you may not see it immediately, right? We're all so obsessed with the 5 senses. It's like, well, if I can't see it, taste it, touch it, whatever, then it's not real, right? But if you can have a sense of faith, and if you can have a sense of trust, what if in that moment of holding pure love, you just counterbalanced, the negative emotions of a million people, right? And so that's what's so powerful. It's like the negative emotions are not, it's not like a weight, like a scale, like, oh, there's more negative today, oh, there's more positive. It's like, when you're in that positive, conscious space, your impact just goes through the roof, And I mean, you can see that in your own life, right? I mean, don't you experience that in your own life when you're really coming from that space of consciousness? I mean, things flow and you can just sense it. It's that ease of living from there, versus when you're negative and weighed down and it's just like, oh, like it's so heavy, but that positive could pop you out of it in a moment. The consciousness, how can it pop you out of it in a moment? How does that happen? Because it's that powerful. So I just wanted to put that in there. A good visual is like, if you think of the negativity as like this tiny dot in the middle, right? But as the bubble grows, that's the power of the positive, because it's that big. Like the negative is this tiny, that's the amount of power it has. That, like a gnat. Okay. It has the power of a gnat.
Right.
And the positive has the power of like this huge, beautiful, golden, amazing bubble, right? I almost just burned myself with a candle, by the way.
Well, that would have showed us some serious power, right?
Oh my God. The power of fire.
And that would be it, folks. I'd have to call my brother. There's a fire in your room. And it's not on the floor, it's on your wife.
So funny. So anyways, take heart. The message is take heart. Everything you do to increase consciousness for yourself has an exponential impact. And what's more empowering than that?
Yeah. And it goes back to just even, the whole checking in part. Okay. And it's like, and I wrote this down while you were going, because what you were saying was so powerful to me that just came through. It's like, the whole thing is being aware, being conscious of where you are. And the power is knowing where you are, because as soon as you know where you are, then you can move from there. You can move and you can expand from there. And all I want to say to everybody and to ourselves is, you just have to keep going. You know, and you're going to hit that, but at least you know you're there. And by noticing and being conscious of where you're at is a huge step, because a lot of people don't even know or aren't even conscious that they're feeling emotions, or that they're, you know, having a problem with the way that they're interacting with other people. They're just completely oblivious to it. But if you're noticing and you're finding conscious awareness of where you're standing, that is so powerful. And yes, and as soon as you flip that switch and you go into more of a positive space, you know, you make that huge difference in the world. I mean, people are always like, well, I want to make a difference in the world. Start being on a positive vibration, and you will make a difference, even if it's just in your world. Like, what a beautiful world to live in is if you're making a difference in your own world, because then you will, through vibration of your interaction with the world, whether it be the soil of the earth, or a butterfly that you're speaking to, or a horse that you're petting, or a sister-in-law that you're talking to, or a teacher or a child, you will pass that vibration no matter what. I mean, that's why I love horses so much. If you get on a horse and you're in a foul mood, guess what?
Oh, that's so great.
They'll let you know. You know, it's that honing in. It's going within, really, when you're on creatures or you're spending time with creatures. The same thing goes with dogs. Like, you're in a bad mood, your dog does nothing you want them to do. Nothing. You know, they keep barking, they keep running away. I mean, it's a disaster. So just being very conscious of where you're at, and then in that space, knowing there's power and continuing to keep going. You know, always keep going. You know, I feel that a lot of people want to just give up, especially in these times. I mean, my father was a police officer, but my brother, Casey's brother-in-law, is a firefighter, and they've seen a jump in suicides. They've seen a jump in a whole bunch of stuff, and it breaks my heart, because the thing is that we really need to keep going. We need to keep that positive vibration alive and continue to know that this is a space we came into, and that it is a powerful space, and we can be power in that space. So that's,
and you know what I wanted to put on that as a good access to not giving up. You know, celebrate your victories. I mean, kind of what Kelly and I have done here tonight is like getting present to, okay, the last couple of months, where have we done well? You know, what are we kind of proud of? Like, wow, I've actually done really good with that. Like, maybe along the way, it didn't look perfect, you know, and I'm still working on it. Like, these are things, but now I'm present to them. I'm conscious of them. You know, I'm going to celebrate that. Like, I'm going to celebrate my victories. I'm going to celebrate my breakthroughs. And, you know, kind of in terms of looking forward, like, where are we going? Like, okay, cool. You know, that's something, I want to continue to be conscious of it. I want to continue to work on it. Or maybe you look at like, wow, you know, there's this angle, you know, I really wanted to do that and I'm not doing too much of that, you know, so there's kind of like the celebrate your victories, and then also challenge yourself. You know, maybe there's something you wanted to do that you're not doing, or you're not doing as much of it as you could. You know, then work on that. Great. You know, so celebrate yourself and challenge yourself. You know, that's kind of what we want you to get present to, but the celebrating yourself is important, you know, because it'll give you access to kind of the other pieces, and to come from the more expanded space as you pursue that, not the judgmental space, not saying, well, I didn't do this, or I don't do it perfectly every day. No, like, celebrate the little victories, you know, because that'll help get you through. But first you have to be present to it. You have to be in the present moment to do that. And be careful about, you know, projecting too far forward. It's good to have a sense of where you're going and what you can keep working on, but, you know, also stay in the present moment, stay centered, you know, stay in the center of your bubble. I love that. So, we wanted to encourage you to do that. And I'm trying to think, I think that was most of, I think that's what we wanted to cover today, my dear. Yeah, no, I think we really covered it. Did you have a message that you channeled tonight? I forgot to ask you that before we started. Okay, perfect.
No, I don't.
Oh, perfect.
No, this is my message. Keep going, right? You know, Stay within the power of you,
not
your ego power, please.
Yep.
Let her go.
And have fun with it, kind of play around with it. I mean, we were talking earlier, like, a lot of what we're becoming present to, we're getting better at just like laughing about it, like noticing it. Okay. We're noticing it. And then whether it's ourselves or other people, just kind of like laughing about it. Like, oh my gosh, you're doing that thing again, or they were doing that thing again. That's so funny, without taking it like,
and we're never encouraging that people stop, the fun times and the comedy and, sometimes, I'm not saying use somebody as comedy, but, turn it into something fun.
Yeah.
Don't always be so serious about it, because life doesn't need to be serious.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. But, I mean, kind of moving forward, it's like the more conscious you are, then that's going to be the flavor, So it's like, as you kind of move through this space, and I kind of said this last week in terms of, I mean, how are the next few months going to go for you? That's really up to you. Like, are they going to be increasing in consciousness and increasing in that exponential power and that exponential expansion, and even if you have an intention and a commitment to that, even if you do it, just this much, it means like every tiny increment you go up is hugely powerful. So any breakthrough you have and any increase you have in staying conscious and being conscious is a big victory. Like he was saying that most people only rise 5 points in their entire life, right?
Wow.
Like 5 points overall, as like your overall beingness. I mean, certainly during a day we can go up and down, but in terms of like the overall vibe you're putting out there, most people increase 5 points.
Like the concrete switch.
Right. Like let's say humanity was at 204 and then maybe in our lifetime it rises to like 209. Hey, that's still super powerful. But guess what? You can go from being a 30 to being a 550. That right is a very powerful lifetime, depending on where you come in at and kind of like that victim mentality that kind of dominates the bottom. You can really, but who's going to rise up out of that? You're going to rise yourself up out of that. Conscious. That's why it's called the levels of consciousness. The more you become conscious, the more you work your way out of that. And once you hit kind of that 200 level, that's the empowerment. That's the, wow, I feel agency in my own life and in my own sense of power. I'm gonna seize that agency, for myself. I'm going to increase my levels of consciousness, no matter what's happening in the world, no matter what's happening in my life, and using those, those tests or those things that are happening as access, and the higher in consciousness you go, the easier it is, like you were saying. And I think it goes back perfectly to what you said at the beginning, where that becomes more natural and easier. And then it'll be harder to exist, kind of like I was saying, it now feels like a little uncomfortable sometimes to, exist a way that before was totally normal to you.
Right.
So, kind of play with that. Notice those kinds of things too.
Baby, you're a firework. Happy 4th of July to everybody.
And happy 4th of July. I love your, your fire comment from earlier. It's like,
yeah. Oh, I forgot to mark it. It is July 2nd, so that we do know 2020. I forgot to mark that in the beginning.
Oh, seriously. I can't believe it's July already.
See?
Amazing.
It doesn't matter what order you put anything in, as long as you get it in, right?
Exactly. You got it. You squeezed it in.
All right. Well, I think that's it for us tonight.
Yeah. That's a wrap.
Okay. Well, everybody be safe out there. Have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Since you are going to be around family and friends, this is a great time to check in with yourself and make sure that you are being your better self, and that you're letting that egotistical side of you go. Because I know that there's going to be a lot of discussions out there because you can't help it.
Seriously.
So take care of yourselves. Be kind to you. We love you. And have a wonderful day, night, whenever you're watching this.
Yes. We love you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Oh, and if you have any, as usual, if you have any comments or topics you want for us to explore, feel free to post or send us a message. All right. Love you. Bye.
Love you.